The sharpening of chisels is completed on different stones, which can also be referred to as honing stones or wheat stones. Sharpening, honing and wheat stones are general names for the many different forms of stones used to sharpen tools. The term wheat stones should not be confused for whetstone, which is a specific type of sharpening stone, the term wheating being an old word for sharpening. Stones come in various materials and forms, with the three most popular categories being oil stones, water stones and diamond stones. Stones also come in a variety of grades of coarseness ranging from extra fine to extra coarse. You can see the corresponding grit in the table. Whichever type of stone you are using, you will need, at the minimum, one medium stone and one fine stone to achieve a sharp edge. Now let's look at the different stone types in more detail. The oil stone is a popular stone which is lubricated using honing oil. Oil stones can be either man-made or synthetic. Oil stones are generally affordable and easily acquired. They do cut the slowest out of the three types of stone, and as you must use oil can create more mess to clean up. The natural Arkansas oil stones, which comes in a variety of colours and coarseness, are seen by many as the best oil stones to buy, but synthetic versions are more affordable and work reasonably well. Water stones are natural or synthetic stones that use water for lubrication. They can also be known as whetstones due to the fact some users will soak the stones in water before use. They cut quickly and come in the widest range of grits. As they use water for lubrication, no other resource is required, and they clean up easily. Because these stones are soft, they will wear down quicker than the other stone types and be more prone to accidental damage. Water stones are favoured by Japanese craftsmen, and the best water stones tend to be Japanese. Diamond stones are metal plates which have crushed diamond bonded to them. These stone can be used dry or lubricated with water. They are the fastest cutting stone and the hardest wearing, remaining flat for a substantial amount of time. They are the easiest stone to maintain. Good diamond stones can be expensive to buy. Choosing a sharpening stone type will depend on many factors, and it is personal preference on which to use, as all have advantages and disadvantages. One other factor to consider is if using oil or water stones, you will need a way to ensure these stones remain flat, as they will wear over time, creating an uneven surface which will hamper the sharpening process. Diamond stones do not require regular flattening. Stones which are used to flatten sharpening stones are known as lapping or flattening stones or plates. Again, they come in various forms, but tend to be harder, more abrasive stones. Some have grooves to allow for the material to disperse. If you do not have a flattening stone, a cheap alternative is to place a piece of 100 grit, wet and dry sandpaper onto a thick piece of glass. We will look at how to use a flattening stone in more detail later in the video. When you receive a tool from a shop, it will already have an angle ground onto it. In the case of a bevel edge chisel, this will be 25 degrees. This angle is known as the grinding angle, and the edge referred to as the primary bevel. Although a chisel will cut with a primary bevel, most woodworkers prefer to put a secondary edge onto their tool with the use of a sharpening stone. This will allow a superior cutting edge, which will last longer and will be quicker to resharpen. This angle is known as the honing angle, and the edge referred to as the secondary bevel. On a bevel edge chisel, this is normally 30 degrees. You do not need to regrind a primary bevel often, and would only require to do so if the chisel edge is off square, the edge of your chisel was severely chipped, or the secondary bevel had been created at too steep an angle. Regrinding can be done on a coarse sharpening stone, and as it can be a lengthy process, would normally be carried out on a motorised sharpening stone or combination grinder machine like a Tormek. This video will show you how to sharpen a bevel edge chisel. However, the same process can be applied to various woodwork chisels and plane blades. Refer to the table for a guide to the angles for different tools. In this video, I will be using water stones with 400, 1000, 3000 and 8000 grit. These stones were bought as a set, which also includes a flattening stone and honing guide. Although it is not essential to have all these stones. Remember, at the very least, you will require a medium and fine grit stone. This would normally be around 1000 and 1200 grit. If, however, you require to establish a new primary bevel, a coarser stone like a 400 grit is very helpful. Many stones can be bought glued back to back, so you can just flip it over once used on one side. The same processes shown in this video can be used on all the other stone types with small variations, which I will highlight as we go along. If you don't have a flattening stone, I will also show you an alternative technique to flatten your sharpening stones. It's essential that your stone is flat before undertaking any sharpening. This flattening stage does not need to be carried out if using diamond stones, as they are very hard wearing, or if your stones are brand new. The softer oil and water stones will wear after use, causing them to become uneven, so oil stones should be flattened after around every 10 uses and water stones before every use. Flattening stones are coarse stones, usually made of silicon carbide, and have grooves to allow material to disperse. To flatten a honing stone with a flattening stone, mark a series of lines on the honing stone with a pencil along its length and lubricate the stone with the appropriate lubricant. For water stones, soak them in water for at least 10 minutes before use, and if using an oil stone, use a small amount of honing oil. Now, rub the flattening stone over the sharpening stone groove side down for a few minutes until all pencil marks have disappeared. Check with a straight edge to ensure the stone is flat. Repeat the process for all sharpening stones you are using. If you do not have a flattening stone, a good alternative is to secure a piece of 100 grit wet and dry sandpaper onto any truly level surface like glass, or in this case, an off-cut worktop. Lubricate the wet and dry with water for water stones, or honing oil for an oil stone, and then take your sharpening stone and rub it face down on top of the wet and dry for several minutes again until all pencil marks have been removed. Repeat the process using a higher grit wet and dry like 400 or 500 grit to remove any deep scratches and check it is level before moving on. This stage only needs to be carried out if the tool blade is damaged, severely off square, or the angle of your secondary bevel is too steep or too large. This stage is commonly carried out on a motorised grinder, like a motorised whetstone, or wet grinder like a Tormek. However, if you do not have access to this, you can create a primary bevel on a sharpening stone. As you may need to remove a sizable amount of metal in this stage, having a coarser stone like a 400 grit or lower will speed up this process. Before starting, mark a line with a tri-square and a Sharpie where you want the new edge of the primary bevel to start. This should be below any damage or off-square angle. To create an accurate primary bevel on a sharpening stone, you will need a honing guide. This is a tool which will hold your chisel in place at the correct angle, allowing you to create an accurate and consistent angle whilst sharpening. They come in various forms and shapes. The one I will use in this demo is an inexpensive one. Most honing guides will tell you the chisel projection on the side of the tool, or in the instructions. All you need to do to set it up is feed the blade through the tool jaws, bevel edge facing down, and measure how much it is projecting out. So, on this honing guide to create a 25-degree angle that I will need for the primary bevel of a bevel edge chisel, the blade must be projecting out 40 millimeters. Hand tighten initially, then check it is level in the jaws and tighten with a screwdriver. You are now ready to move on to the next stage. A honing guide can be used for all chisel types like a mortise chisel and also for plane irons. If using it for plane irons, put it in the top section of the jaws and ensure you are using the plane iron projection measurements. When using a honing guide, it's important that both the primary bevel and honing guide wheel are in contact with the sharpening stone at all times. Lubricate the coarsest stone you have, and using a triangle shaped grip with your thumbs of the honing guide and index finger gently pressing down on the chisel, slide the guide and chisel backwards and forwards using the full length of the stone, ensuring both the honing guide and blade is in contact with the honing stone. Use all areas of the stone so you do not wear out one section. Check the chisel periodically and re-lubricate the stone as necessary. Stop when you have reached your pen line. You may need to remark this as you go. Check with a tri-square that the edge is straight. For reference, this process took me around 15 to 20 minutes in total to complete. Once you have established a new primary bevel, you will want to ensure its surface is as smooth as possible. This will require removing the deeper scratches from the coarse stone. To do this, start with the next coarsest stone you have, in this case a 1000 grit stone, and repeat the previous step, sliding the chisel up and down. You should only need to spend a few minutes doing this, stopping when the larger scratches created from the coarser stone have disappeared. The surface of your primary bevel will also become shinier. Repeat this process up to your finest stone. By now, the surface of the primary bevel should look smooth with no large scratches and relatively shiny. The process of creating a new primary bevel will create a rough edge along the edge of your chisel, known as the burr. You will be able to feel this with your thumb. Always feel across the chisel edge, never along it, as this will result in a cut. The burr must be removed to create a truly sharp edge. To remove the burr, once you have finished on your finest grit stone, place the chisel flat side down, and ensuring it is flat, slide the chisel up and down several times. Check the chisel edge with your thumb periodically, stopping when it feels smooth. It is imperative that the bottom of the chisel is flat, as this will ensure a sharp edge between the meeting points of the flat surface and the bevel edge. The process of flattening the bottom is called lapping. Even if the chisel is brand new, this process should be carried out, as the grinding of a chisel can leave deep scratches which need to be removed for a superior cutting edge. You only need to lap 10 to 20 millimeters back from the cutting edge. Lapping should initially be carried out on your coarsest sharpening stone. Lubricate the stone and rest the flat side of the chisel on the stone. Press down on the chisel firmly to ensure it stays flat and slide it up and down the stone. It is good practice to turn the stone around during this process so you do not wear down one side. Do this until you have created fresh scratches which are parallel to the top edge and any deeper grinding scratches have been removed. For reference, I slid the chisel up and down around 200 times on each stone. Repeat the process on your other stones again, working from coarse to smooth until all the scratches created with the previous stone have been removed. Once this process has been completed from coarse to smooth, it is unlikely you will need to work through all the grits the next time you are sharpening your chisel, and you could just start the lapping process on a fine stone. After lapping on the final stone, there should be few visible scratches, and the surface should start to become shiny and reflective. You will now be ready to move on to the next stage. Some chisels will have what is called a hollow grind on the back. This is where the middle of the back has been ground out more to be concave to allow quicker lapping. Japanese chisels, for example, will normally have a hollow grind. If you have a chisel with a hollow grind, you do not need to flatten out the concave section. Just ensure that you have lapped a flat area around 5mm back from the cutting edge. Although at this stage the chisel would be sharp enough to work on, most woodworkers prefer a secondary bevel, sometimes known as a micro bevel. This increases sharpness and makes re-sharpening a quicker process. Creating a secondary bevel can be done with a honing guide or freehand. In my opinion, it is worth taking the time to learn to do it freehand, as this will save time in the long run. However, if new to sharpening, you may want to use the honing guide until you get used to the process. This will be shown at the end of this section. Even though the secondary bevel should be 30 degrees, it does not have to be exact. The important thing is that it is at least a couple of degrees higher than the primary bevel. To ensure this, place the chisel on your coarsest stone resting on the primary bevel. Now lift it up slightly to create a higher angle. This will be the angle you use to create the secondary bevel. Now, ensuring this angle is held in place and you're holding it comfortably, slide the chisel up and down on the stone several times. Some people prefer to use a figure of 8 motion at this stage, but for a beginner I would stick with sliding it up and down until you can establish a consistent secondary bevel. Check the edge after a few strokes. You should be able to see the secondary bevel appear. Try to keep it parallel with the top edge and between 2 to 5mm wide. If you notice it is bigger at one side, put more pressure on the other side when you return it to the stone. Do this for a few minutes until a good secondary bevel has been established. Repeat this process, starting with your next coarsest stone working to your finest. In this case, I have started with a 400 grit, then 1000, then 3000, and finishing with an 8000 grit. However, a medium and fine grit stone would be adequate. Periodically check the secondary bevel is still parallel with the chisel edge, altering the pressure if necessary. Move on to the next stone when the scratches created from the previous stone have been removed. This should not be a lengthy process, and you only need to spend a few minutes on each stone. The process of creating a secondary bevel will create a rough edge along the edge of your chisel known as the burr. You will be able to feel this with your thumb. Always feel across the chisel edge, never along it, as this will result in a cut. The burr must be removed to create a truly sharp edge. Remove the burr once you have finished on your finest gritstone by placing the chisel flat side down on it and ensuring it is flat, sliding the chisel up and down several times. Check the chisel edge after several strokes with your thumb and stop when it feels smooth. If using a honing guide, the secondary bevel should be 30 degrees, so set the honing guide the same way as when creating the primary bevel. However, change the projection length as per the tool's instruction. In this case, a 30-degree angle requires a 30mm projection. Now starting on your coarsest stone, slide the chisel and honing guide up and down using the same technique as for the primary bevel. You will soon start to see a secondary bevel appear. Do this for a few minutes and then repeat the process through your other stones from coarse to smooth. On the last stage, ensure you remove the burr. Although at this stage, your chisel will be sharp enough to carry out fine woodwork, if you require an extremely sharp edge for very fine work or dense hardwood, you could polish your edge using a leather strop. To do this, place your strop on a flat surface and apply a good amount of polishing compound. Now establish your secondary bevel angle and drag back several times, then remove any burr created by placing your chisel flat side down and sliding it down several times. Do not slide your chisel up and down when using the strop or it may rip. After this stage, your secondary bevel should now be mirror shiny. Be able to slice through paper and be able to cut through wood with relative ease. There are no right or wrong ways to sharpen a chisel, and this is just a rough guide. Like all aspects of woodwork, there are many ways to achieve the same goal, and it is important to find a technique that works for you. Make sure you are being careful when sharpening, as sharp chisels can cause bad injuries. If you have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.